Hey, this is Malika of Evanston Live TV, and we are back for another episode of Neighbors Speaks. I know you guys have been missing it, because Neighbors always brings the truth to us, gives us a whole nother perspective. So today we're going to be talking about, a lot of people believe the history of black people started with slavery. Many of us know that is not the truth. We came from doctors, scientists, royalty, and people need to know that. The rich history of black people. And then also the whole Jussie Smollett. I pronounce it Smollett. I don't know if it's Smollett, but I say Smollett. And what does that mean? Is it being set up now for, one black man against two black men? One of them got to go down. I mean, it's just a sad state of affairs around that whole situation because one of them is going to go down for... We don't know what actually happened that night, but it's sad. So I always turn to my pastor, Pastor Neighbors, because he always gives me something else to think about, another way to look at things, a deeper perspective on things. So I'm going to turn this around.
Okay.
Pastor Neighbors.
Hello, Malika. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for another episode of Neighbor Speaks. I know you have been super busy, so thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So... where do we want to start? Do we want to start with Mr. Smollett, or do we want to start with the rich history of black people? And it kind of all ties in together because Mr. Smollett has kind of that situation. I won't say just him. I don't want to persecute him without, a trial, even though he's already gone out and spoken about the situation. Mm-hmm. But it's not a good look.
It's not a good look.
And we come from a rich history.
We come from a rich history. And Malika, I thank you for bringing these two subjects together that many people think would not necessarily be interwoven, but I think they are. And I'd like to start with the history piece and offer just a few minutes of background to share with you and to affirm, as you did, that our history as African American people did not begin with the institution of slavery. I think there are a great many people who believe that. I think that most of white America believes that because they have not been taught and they do not care, it seems to me, about the history that began before the African diaspora. And I think that a great many black people are just simply not aware of it because they haven't been taught. And so when we talk about the history of blacks before the institution of slavery, we're talking about sort of the acknowledgement of the quadcentennial. So the quadcentennial is 1619 to 2019. We are in the 400th year of when Africans first set foot on the North American continent as indentured servants. There were 20 that landed at Jamestown in 1619, and now these 400 years later, there are a great many people who believe that that's the only history that we have. But I want to share that we have more than just that history. And the history didn't just begin when Africans landed at Plymouth Rock, or as Malcolm X said, Plymouth Rock landed on us. It didn't just start during the Middle Passage when we were unwitting and painful subjects to the most humiliating form of subjugation known to humankind. It didn't just start when we were captured on the west coast of Africa, but our history began millennia ago on the continent of Africa. And if you look at the entire continent on the northeastern side of the continent, we have Egypt, and Egypt had its own civilization that ran uninterrupted for at least 3,000 years. Most historians and Egyptologists are able to trace that history back to at least the year 6000 BC. And that is 6,000 years before the birth of Christ, and that would be 7,600 years before the beginning of the institution of slavery. And so we have that history. And in that history, you have 28 dynasties. You have, as you said, philosophers that studied the ancient thought processes of human beings. You have astronomers that studied the stars. You had mathematicians that came up with algebraic formula. You have medicine and proof that there was actual brain surgery that was taking place 3,000 years before the birth of Jesus. Now, I said the other day, and I think it's true, I'm not sure that I would have wanted to have been a patient 3,000 years ago when somebody was cutting open my head. because I don't think they come up with anesthesiology and all of that sort of thing. But anyway, there's evidence that happened. So you have this glorious reality of Egypt's history, which is right on the continent of Africa. And it culminates, I think, under the domain of Ramses II, who was a major, major pharaoh who ruled for 68 years. The Great Pyramid was built under his tenure by Imhotep, who was one of his top scientists. You know, all of that is just great stuff. So, you know, I love this stuff. So you go to the other side of the continent of Africa, where most of our own ancestors came from because of the institution of slavery, and you have other empires that existed as well. You have the Ghanaian Empire that was supplanted by the Mali Empire that was supplanted by the Songhai Empire. All of them had their own black kings and queens. The Empire of Mali was considered to be the wealthiest empire in the history of humankind. And so King Mansa Musa, who was the Sterling King of that empire in his day, according to Forbes magazine, was the richest human being that ever lived. And he was the richest human being that ever lived because gold mines were being mined during his time. And the technology of mining became so sophisticated that he was able to produce more gold. So the story is told that he converted to Islam, and when he went to Mecca for his holy pilgrimage, he took so much gold that the economy in all of Arabia ended up teetering and almost falling apart because he spent so much gold there. So that's just amazing. And that's the kind of stuff that we come from. And all of that is hundreds of years before the beginning of slavery. So we know that. We know about South Africa because I think, Malika, when you and I were kids, we saw on television Shaka Zulu. So we know about that fierce sense of determination and the warrior-like spirit that existed. We had kings and we also had queens. We also had pharaohs who were women. So there was this sense of more unity when it came to even gender. Inclusivity rather than inclusivity, which I think is a byproduct of the European heritage. So I'm excited about our history.
Oh yes, and I wish they would teach more of that in District 65 and 202. More of that, because I didn't go to grade school here, but I did go to high school here, and I didn't learn any of that.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, Malika, I'm going to tell you, I didn't learn it. I didn't learn it from grade school through high school. I didn't learn it when I was in college. I learned it. I learned it when I became a student myself after earning 4 college degrees. I still didn't know about my history, but I remember one day as a young pastor going to Rutgers University and hearing a free lecture by a fellow named Ivan Sertima. And Ivan Sertima at that time was the leading Egyptologist in the world. And he taught at Rutgers University. He was a brother, and that absolutely, touched my soul. And I've been a student of our history and of our culture ever since. And I think that you're right. We need to teach that as often as we can. But I'm not going to necessarily leave it up to the districts. I'm not going to leave it up to 65 or 202. And this may surprise you, but this is who I'm going to tell you ought to be teaching this kind of history before the quadcentennial. Black folks ought to be teaching it to our own children. And in particular, African-American churches, whatever denomination, African-American houses of worship, whatever their faith, ought to have a component alongside their Christian education. We're teaching our children about Jesus. We're teaching them about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and Joseph. We're teaching them about Moses. Why can't we also teach them about Ignaton and Nefertiti and Imhotep and Ramses? Why can't we teach them about King Mansa Musa and all of those other wonderful people that I just mentioned? I think that the black curriculum within houses of worship ought to be buttressed from our own experience, because that will help our young people to understand the resiliency and the power that sort of runs through their bloodline. Yeah, yes. Absolutely.
When I started learning more about the Moors, that gave me I felt so connected to it.
Yes.
And it made me just feel so proud, so good. I was like, yes, I connect to that. I wonder if my ancestry came from the Moors. You know,
Absolutely.
I felt very, very connected to it.
No doubt. No doubt. So, and also, I forgot to mention another empire, and this one was south of Egypt, but that would be called the Kush Empire. And the Kush Empire sort of covers what would presently be Ethiopia and Somalia. It was another grand black civilization that lasted over 2,000 years. Very powerful, very wealthy. And it sat in that Mesopotamian base, you know. And the Mesopotamian base is that area that sort of surrounds the Mediterranean, both that are to the east and the west of it. So that would include present-day Israel, parts of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Turkey, you know, all of that. That was where most people believe civilization really got its start. You know, and to me, that's exciting, because what that means is when civilization was really beginning to make contributions, it was our people that were making those contributions.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So, and then you wanted to talk a little bit about Jussie. So, you know, we got to fast forward.
Mr. Smollett. So, you know, we got to transition from the royalty in our blood to where the heck we are right now, the state, the mentality, you know, and I'm going to give it to him. You know, he's innocent until proven guilty. But what I'm disappointed in, what the outcome is going to be, is that between 3 black men, one of them is going down for this. And
so,
yeah.
So I have I have a slightly different perspective than that, Malika, because I don't think it's between 3 black men. I think 2 of those black men are what we would consider average yokel journeymen who were doing nothing more than being physical fitness trainers for Jussie. Whatever happens, I do not believe that they possessed either the sophistication or the savvy or the monetary capacity to pull off this kind of thing that occurred. I tend to lean on the side that that Jussie concocted this somehow for whatever reason. And like you said, I think that we live in a society where people are innocent until proven guilty. But at the same time, Malika, would we be saying that if in 1955 the people that murdered Emmett Till were caught and brought to justice, would black people then say about those people, well, no, they're innocent until proven guilty? Or many of the other situations that have occurred since then. So I think sometimes when it happens to our own people, we tend to say, well, wait a minute, I want to give the benefit of the doubt. So I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. The only thing I know is what the media is giving us. And the media, on the one hand, that's supporting Jussie, is saying that he's still saying that he's innocent, even after the commander of the Chicago Police Department came forward.
Broke down every second of that night.
Broke down every second of the night, talked about the plan, brought the 2 men in who admitted to being a part of the plan and all of that. So I tend to think that that he concocted a plan, and that plan was somehow to create an opportunity for him to get more PR and publicity, which he's certainly gotten. And then of course, the chief also said that the plan was for him to get more money, that he wanted a larger salary. And you know, you've been on Facebook as much as I have. We see all of these funnies and images that people are talking about. I saw one earlier today where he's counting, somebody gives him money and he's counting $60,000, which is getting every single episode $60,000. And he's saying, oh my God, this is just not enough money. So from my vantage point and perspective, if Jussie is guilty of this, it's absolutely reprehensible. Because what Jussie has done then is he's put his own future, he's put his own self-importance above everybody else. And when I say everybody else, I mean every other black person in the United States of America and every other person who is LGBTQ in America, because he has said that he was attacked because he was black and because he was gay. And if it comes out that he was not attacked because he was black and gay. Then he has just used us for his own self-serving purposes. And I cannot ever support anything like that. And I think that there's so much doubt shrouded in the reality of his story. And it seems so much like a hoax that I'm leaning more on the side of not giving him the benefit of the doubt, but saying, what can we do to prevent other of our people from ever doing this again? You know, black people have a way of being forgiving. You know, we've talked about this in another episode, Malika. You know, black people are quick to forgive one another and all of that. But, you know what? I think that we have to be forgiving because the Bible says that. It talks about the need to be forgiving. But at the same time, it does not tell us to turn a blind eye to when people are misusing other human beings. He may have misused the entire black race. He may have misused the entire LGBTQ community for his own. You got to pay for that. You can't do that. You can't do it and get away with it and think that everybody's going to pat you on the back. Now, should something happen in the future and people say, well, you know, the police chief got it wrong and, you know, and he really was attacked and all of this is true, then I will be the first to say, you know, I'm wrong. I apologize and all of that. But right now, it just looks horrible.
It looks really bad. My concern is, okay, if he did put this whole hoax together, you know, why he chose 2 black men to do this. And now he's got this high-powered attorney, which we've seen, you know, celebrity high-powered attorney get some guilty people off. You know, so if he gets him off, then what does that mean for those 2 innocent black men who, you know, they trusted him? And like you said, you know, they're personal trainers. They were extras on the show. You know, they're just trying to survive.
Yes.
And probably had no idea it was going to snowball into where it is today.
Yes.
My concern is, you know, what may happen to them because he's got the money, the attorney, he's got all that behind him. And we've seen guilty people get off.
Yes, yes. Absolutely. We've seen guilty people get off. We've got a guilty person in the Oval Office at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now. We've seen him get off before he became president, and we've seen him get off since he's been president. So that's a reality of the kind of nation that we live in. It talks about the sort of immoral structure, what we call the justice system. There is no justice for just us. It's justice for other people that are very different from us. And so I'm very concerned about that. But when it comes to those 2, and I appreciate your concern for them, I just have the sense and the belief that they're going to be all right. Because remember now, they haven't been charged with anything. The police chief and his staff of people who were working on this for 28 days or something like that, you know, non-sleep, you know, 24/7. They were able to detect that these 2 were a part of this, and they did not charge them. They have not been charged with an offense. They've not been charged with a crime. They were actually let go after they agreed to cooperate with the authorities. So I don't see them having a future that is coming back on them.
Okay.
Everything is on Jussie right now. Everything is on him. And my hope is if he ever looks at this, or anybody that knows Jussie ever looks at your show, my hope is, Malika, that somebody in his circle, somebody in his concentric circle will take that brother to the side and will say, before this goes any further, you have got to be willing to literally come clean and to share with the world, however you want to do it, exactly what happened that night. And if you're the perpetrator of this crime, if you're the author of this crime, you have to be the one to admit it right now for you to ever have any semblance of a nation forgiving you and of people being able to say, he's a young man, he can still, go on with his life. But if he doesn't do that and decides to ride this out in court because of his money and because of what you said, high-powered authorities, and then he's still found guilty, I'm done. I'm done. Because we don't need to be fighting about stuff like this in this day and age.
Right.
The urgency of the time is upon us, and racism is real. Homophobia is real. Sexism is real. Anti-Semitism is real. Every kind of ism that's out there is real. Why are we fussing about something that was just concocted and made up?
Right. Yeah, and he better hope nothing actually had, some real white supremacists get a hold of him, because now he's cried wolf and nobody's going to believe him. So he's pretty much giving them the license to, So we got to hope and pray.
It's interesting, Malika. Somebody told me I have a cousin who's lived in the Chicago area forever. And the cousin from Chicago also lived in the area where this crime took place. He said as long as he had lived in the area for over 30 years, nothing remotely close like this had ever happened, even though that area had its share of crime and this about, but nothing like this. And Malika, I'm going to tell you, we've been around for a while now as well, both in Chicago and in America. This is a different kind of situation. I know that there have been blacks that have been beaten up by white racists and all of that, but I can never remember a situation like this in these contemporary times, where somebody has been taken and a rope has been tied around their neck and bleach has been poured on their body, and all of this other stuff that he said happened to him. It's just unique. And I thought it was far-fetched in the first place, but when I first wrote about it, I came to the defense of Jussie, because that's all that I knew.
All did.
and now I think most of us are feeling like fools, like we've been bamboozled, as Malcolm X would say, by one of our own.
Well, maybe he's not really one of our own. Not all of us are part of the family.
Well, now that's an interesting word. Yesterday at our annual Youth Day, the theme was to be young, gifted, and black. Right, that's a beautiful song. It's been sampled by Nina Simone and Donny Hathaway. It's an absolutely beautiful idea that our young people came up with that theme for this year. But we're also a multiracial congregation, so I was kind of sensitive to the idea. Now, what about other young people going to think about this theme to be young, gifted, and black if they're not black? And what you just said brought something to mind. I know many white people who are more black than I know black people who are not black, because they have more white tendencies. And so I think that we have to sometimes redefine, what does it mean to be black? Now, we know that there's the color of the skin, it's the hue, those whom the sun is God, those whom the sun God has loved. I know that's a part of what it means to be black. But I think there's something else in terms of what it means to be black. It's a consciousness. It is a moral fortitude. It is a sort of decision. I am going to base my life and my actions and my thoughts and my dreams on this group of people who have been marginalized, who have been oppressed, who have suffered, and no matter what my color is, my life is with them, because I believe that's just, and it's the thing that a just God would want me to do. Now, that can be anybody. That can be white, yellow, brown, whatever. And we need more people like that. And not just people who are black by skin, but are doing everything that they can to avoid being what it really means to be black. My goodness.
I think that's the next episode of Neighbor Speaks.
well, all right, Malika. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you as always, Pastor Neighbors. Thank you.